talking about the media situation in Pakistan, and especially the press freedom situation in Pakistan, one can sort of get very disheartened when one looks at the situation which is there. The legal, political, and policy environment for media has deteriorated over the last few years, and they continue to face violence. There is widespread impunity for those that indulge in violence against media. And you often hear the situation that things are getting from bad to worse. Press freedom, like everything else, moves in waves. And right now, we might be in a little bit of a downward trend, but this is not something that continues. And if you look at the longer term period, we will see that we are far ahead than from what we started. To take a very, very long-term view of the situation, I would like to say that we were unfortunate that we never had a tradition of professional press freedom ever. We came from societies which were kingdoms, in which before speaking, we would ask the ruler, "Ke ji jaan ki aman paun to kuch kahun." When the Britishers came, they carried forward, and they were the first one to set up the structures of control of the press in India. The first Britisher who started a newspaper criticized the East India Company. He was jailed, and his paper was banned. From distribution, the postal services, from collection, telegraphing, from production, the printing presses, from declarations, all were set by the British. After the War of Independence, the editor of the first Urdu newspaper was hanged, Maulvi Muhammad Baqir. Before Pakistan became independent, there was very little press and very little Muslim press. And Quaid-e-Azam asked the Muslims, and Nehru asked his followers to set up newspaper to spread their message. And then within a short period, there were many newspapers that were started. There was a Muslim newspaper in every province, and that was a good thing. The weakness of this was that these newspapers were not spread to inform the public. These newspapers were set up for the mission of creating a new country. So there was polarization in our newspapers. And when Pakistan was formed, the same people moved to Pakistan. So they were either working for these newspapers, which were working for a cause, or they were working for the British war, censorship, public relations method. They were also working for a cause. So those were the people. So when Pakistan was formed, there was not a tradition of an independent media. The polarization that existed in India also carried forward in Pakistan. And then you had the liberal press, you had the left press, and you had the right press. And they were all working towards that thing. Somehow or the other, press freedom was not all that important. In the first 6 years of Pakistan's existence, 33 newspapers were banned, and 15 were fined heavily. In one of the most shameful episodes for Pakistani media occurred during that time in 1949, when Civil and Military Gazette had published a wrong story that there was some talks going on between Pakistan and India to accept the division of Kashmir. The next day, they apologized, they fired the person, they published retraction, but Pakistani media was very, very angry. And 16 newspapers from the West Pakistan published a joint editorial. Everyone published the same editorial asking the government to ban Civil and Military Gazette. That was a shameful act. Newspapers telling those things. The editors of East Pakistan refused to sign that editorial, but Pakistani editors did. In this that was published were the leaders of all three polarized factions, including liberals by Altaf Hussain, a great editor of Pakistan. Hamid Nizami signed this thing, a great editor of Pakistan. Faiz Ahmad Faiz signed this editorial asking for the ban of newspaper, a great person, a great revolutionary. They all signed the thing. And that was what gave the government, of course, each time they can go further by that. So the newspaper was banned for 6 months. It never quite recovered after that. Ayub Khan then came, and again, he was the one that set up the biggest infrastructure for the control of the media, including the takeover of APP, Progressive Publishers, NPT, government advertising. He also set up the Press and Publication Ordinance. And one more thing, when the war of 1965 happened, they introduced the Defense of Pakistan rules. Rules so draconian, so strict that they are required for the very defense of Pakistan. They were supposed to be temporary. The war lasted 17 days. The DPR rules remained until 1985. Then democracy came after that, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto came to power. Nothing changed as far as the media was concerned. There was still a banning of newspapers, jailing of journalists. The two things that happened was that because Bhutto had nationalized the big industries, the government had a lot more power and a lot more money to use advertising as a carrot and a stick. The second thing that Bhutto did was they took over National Press Trust and brought him directly under him. Ziaul Haq, what he did was he added all this, but the new innovation, which luckily did not catch on, was that he whipped 3 journalists who had written against him. But one thing that he did that had a longer lasting impact on people, on journalism, was where you can take blood money and forget the person. That is the problem that we are facing right now for those that murder journalists and then pay the blood money and then they get off scot-free. So insidiously, that is a bigger problem that happened. After Ziaul Haq, we started dismantling the structures of control of the media, and we worked with it fairly successfully. In 1988, Ghulam Ishaq Khan, they knew that Benazir Bhutto would be coming to power, probably. What we should do is to get rid of this beautiful law, the Press and Publication Ordinance, and then the government will find it very difficult to control the media. And they were right. When Benazir Bhutto came, this terrible piece of legislation was off the ground, and it basically, the new legislation said you apply for a declaration. First, the government had to give permission. Under this law, you apply for a declaration. If you don't get it within 4 months, it's assumed you have the declaration, you can start publishing. And that brought about a mushroom growth of newspapers, all sorts of newspapers. So newspapers were now available for one rupee each. And these were the ones, that was the first shake-up of Pakistani media industry. Before this time, there were relatively few newspapers. The government was providing most of the advertising, so they could afford to be very cultured and very civilized. Television was allowed, private television that allowed. And pretty much at a steady pace, the media gained popularity. That also led to a mushroom growth of journalists, and especially from rural areas. There used to be 1 or 2 rural journalists in rural areas. Now there were 20, 30, 40. The newspapers could not afford to pay those journalists. Many more did not want to pay those journalists. The press council that was formed is a government-mandated press council, which is a minority in the world. Generally, these are self-regulatory mechanisms, and press councils are not supposed to give punitive measures. A true press council is supposed to say that, okay, fine, this is not in the best, these do not reflect the best values of journalism. These are not according to our code of ethics, which is there. And the world knows that this action that he did is not a part of the journalism. But our press council can give punitive action, they can impose fine, they can ban newspapers, they can do everything. But again, the government was paying for the secretariat of the press council, and it was paying for the entire paraphernalia of the press council, and so the media said, on balance, we don't have to pay for this press council. There may be a few weaknesses to it, but we'll accept the fact that it's a press council. The other thing that happened, as media was growing, instead of uniting, we became more polarized. So when television came, the print media did not accept television as a serious contender for their for position. So the editors council that you have, Pakistan's Council of Pakistan Newspaper Editors, is only of newspapers. It's not of that. The owners body that you have, All Pakistan Newspaper, is only for the print media. There is a separate body of the PBA for television. Second thing that happened when online came, simply we just refused that they are journalists or worthy of anything consideration. And similarly, the online media itself also felt that the media was the villain in the whole thing, that the media was not ethical, that they had too much power. And I would always say that it is the online media which pushes the limit beyond the mainstream media. You need to support and stand with the mainstream media, otherwise it's going to come and hit you. But of course, nothing so far had happened, and of course, with online media, you could remain anonymous, so there is no need to talk to each other, there is no need to support each other, and that worked till you find out that you are not anonymous, that you can be found out. And all of a sudden, right now, this is our situation where the print media is under problem. We are facing our problems all by ourselves. The television industry is facing problems all by itself. The online media is starting to face problems, and without a structure, it's going to be most difficult for the online media. To give you an idea, 84,000 websites are blocked in Pakistan for objectionable material. This is in addition to 400,000 websites which are blocked because of obscene content. These are major things. One of the problems that I'd like to say is that one tradition that we do not have or did not have is of murdering journalists. Between 1947 and 1988, only one journalist was killed, and that also in a crossfire. Between 2002 and now, 73 journalists have been killed, of which 50 have been murdered, targeted and murdered. The impunity rate is 95%, only 5% have been convicted. 95% of the people go just free. And what is really strange is that the media seems it's somebody else's problem. I mean, the media houses to which those journalists belong, they themselves do not follow up cases of murders of their own journalists. If they were to take on as much as they say about other issues, I'm sure that we would not have this level of impunity. For example, there was a case where Wali Babar of Jio, who was murdered, and Jio decided that we will not let it go, we are going to follow it up. And they continued to follow it up, and they continued to push pressure, and then they got a conviction in case of Wali Babar. If we do that for all of, if not all, at least the 50 who have been murdered, if we follow that and we try and do that, the media does that. It has tremendous reach. How to get them to say this is your issue? How does one do that? You know, in terms of the short term response, like it was mentioned, the Editors for Safety is a new initiative that was started, and it has proved to be really effective. And then the new laws which are coming up, PEMRA, of course, has become a lot more active from December 2015 to April 2017. They took 380 actions against television stations. And that's a huge number. If that had been happening against newspapers, I think we'd be a lot more up in arms. It's a routine thing. They published an advertisement which said, warning the people, don't misuse Article 19. They put half a page of advertising. And if you do, then you can go to jail for life, you can go to jail for 4 years, you can go to jail. So they listed all the things in which you can go to jail for expressing yourself. Then PICA is a big issue. Like I said, a whole new media is emerging, and the newer generation which is coming, I think will be able to better deal with that. I agree with Kamal when he said that there's a lot we can learn from our seniors. They got us to this position that we are, now that we are seniors ourselves, we owe them a lot. But on the whole, I would say that our seniors did a little bit better job than their seniors. We did a little better job than our seniors. And the ones that are coming there, they are doing a brilliant job, which is there. I think each generation was a little bit more secure, a little bit more connected with the world. So I do not believe that things are going for bad to worse. I believe there can be temporary low points. We are going through one low point right now, but I think that the force of history and trends are towards the better, and the new generation of journalists and the new generation of media professionals that is there, I think is going to change the media scene for the better. And again, thank you very much.